everyone. Welcome. Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen here so we can get started. Okay, so yeah, the title of today's presentation is Web Design 101 or Web Design Fundamentals. And basically, I wish I could teach you everything there is to know about building your own website and have you totally prepared to go out and build it from scratch, in an hour and a half presentation. Unfortunately, that's not really realistic, but I think what we can do here is I can give you kind of an overview of what the kind of the web design landscape looks like right now, what your options are, as well as some important things to think about, so whether you are looking to build your own website for the first time for your business, or you already have a website that's been up and running for a while, I think this will give you, some good things to think about, some kind of next steps. If you are new, it'll help you make some decisions about, what the best platform is and just kind of how to move forward there. So that's kind of the vision, the idea behind this presentation, what we're hoping to accomplish. And then just a little background on myself. I'm also a small business owner. I have my own business called New Pillar Marketing, located in Cambridge, Ohio, so about an hour and a half east of Columbus, right where 70 and 77 intersect. So that's where I'm located. And I'm a marketing web developer, marketing consultant. I do digital marketing and I build websites. And I have about 15 years of experience in marketing and web design. So I've been doing this for a little while. And I've been full-time with New Pillar Marketing with my business for over 4 years now. Before that, I worked for another web design company, and I also worked as a marketing manager for a couple different companies. And in the last 4 years, I've worked with over 100 small businesses in various industries from, a lot of them here in Ohio, some in Pennsylvania, that's where I'm from originally, as well as West Virginia, Kentucky, even some out on the West Coast. So I've worked with, and across various industries as well. I've worked with nonprofits, with attorneys, with restaurants, with contractors, so just a variety of different businesses as well, which I feel like gives me a good, kind of jack of all trades, but it gives me kind of a good overview of the business and marketing landscape. And then we're going to talk about why a website is important. Why do you need one in the the kind of our modern day and age? So first of all, because a good first impression is essential. A lot of the time your website is going to be the first thing or one of the first things that people see. They Google your business, okay. So a good first impression is extremely important. It's going to kind of set up your brand, who you are as a business. And and then another key point here why it's important is a website is so I've heard people say in the last 10 years or so, especially that, I have social media, I have my social media accounts. That's where I stay in contact with my customers, potential customers. But the thing there is social media, so a website is, social media, the rules are changing all the time. It's Facebook's in charge really, or Instagram or TikTok is in charge of who sees your posts and things like that. And it continues to be harder and harder even to reach your own followers. So a website is, you have much more control there. So, you know, and a website also shows customers that you mean business, that you're serious, you're not, you know, kind of a fly-by-night organization. You're in it for the long haul. You've invested, and your website is kind of the central hub of your marketing strategy as well. That kind of you know, your social media, your traditional marketing that you're doing, everything kind of centers back on your website. You're going to send people to your website from all those different touch points. So I kind of look at the website as the central hub. So that is why it's important to have a website. Also, before I go any further here, we will have a couple different stopping points for questions. And so yeah, as we go through here, if you just want to go ahead and put those, I know we have a lot of people in this presentation here. So if you want to just go ahead and drop those in the chat, even just as you think of them, if you want to put them in there now, and then there'll be a couple of different points as we go through that I'll address those. So, so and here we'll just go over some basic website terminology, things that you may have heard before, but maybe don't know what they are or have them a little bit confused. I just want to clear up a little bit of that confusion, that kind of, I guess, common confusion that I've seen as I've been doing this. So domain name, that is your website's address. So that's your .com, your .net, your .org. You know, so it's the name of your website plus an extension. That's your domain name. And that's actually distinct from your hosting or your server. And that's actually where your website files reside. And, you know, what you do is you actually, you know, when you're launching a website, you point the domain name to the hosting. Now sometimes those can be one and the same. So something like GoDaddy typically registers your domain name for you and they host your site. So another thing to think about here is there's a term that you may hear is cache or caching. And those are files that are saved or downloaded, so they don't have to be loaded from their source every time. And what that does is it just allows pages to load a little bit faster. So there's browser cache, and you've probably cleared your cache before in your web browser, but there's also a server cache. So that's just another term that you may hear. CMS, that is your content management system. You know, there are WordPress, GoDaddy, different things like that are all different content management systems, and they allow you to just sort of have an easier way of editing the website so you're not coding things from scratch. So that's what a content management system does. Organic search. This has to do with of course, with search engines. And they're just sort of the natural search results. And we'll talk a little bit more about search engines and SEO in a minute here, but and that's kind of as opposed to paid search or the ads,
you and your thought.
the ads that you see at the top. But yeah, organic search are just the natural search results that show up below that. So, and then another thing, and these are terms that I'm sure you've heard before, header and footer. But the key thing there is, you know, of course, the headers at the top of the page, footers at the bottom, normally contain the logo and the menus at the top, and then at the bottom, there's typically a lot of the time there's another menu, other links, and as well as your copyright statement. And the key thing there is that they really don't change from page to page. You know, everything between the header and footer changes as you go from one page to the other. Those things typically stay static. Okay, so we will go through, so these are just going to be the major areas of focus or things that we'll talk about today. Let's see. Okay, so we will talk about branding, which is, you know, who is your business? What's your business's personality? What's it all about? You know, and how that relates to your website. We'll talk about content, And that is, when we say website content, we really mean text, images, and video that are going to be on your website. We'll talk about the user experience. We'll talk about search engine optimization, which is really just how you how your how the search engines access and rank your site for particular keywords. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about mobile friendly design, how you make sure that people are able to see your website and access it, and it looks good on a mobile device. We'll talk about speed and security, how fast your website loads, and is it protected from hackers. We'll talk about calls to action, which is essentially, what do you want your website to accomplish, or what do you want your users to do, and are you inviting them to take that action? And then we'll talk about different options for building your website, and how you can do that. We'll look at primarily 4 different options of website. I kind of lump 2 of them together, but 4 different options. So first of all, branding. And this answers the question, how do you want people to perceive your organization? Is your organization, is it kind of lighthearted and fun? Is it more, is it more serious and analytical? Is it natural? There's all kinds of different ways that you could want your organization to be perceived. So that branding kind of answers that question. It also answers the question, who are your customers? Or it relates to this question, who are your customers and what do they care about? Are they other small business owners? Are they pet owners? Are they, people that are really invested in their health or things like that? What do your customers care about? So what are kind of the demographics and psychographics of your customers? And then you want to answer the question, what makes you different, and hopefully better than your competition? What sets you apart? And then the next thing we're going to talk about is content. What is actually on your website? So if you have text, you want to make sure that generally when people are on a website, there are times when they'll read a little bit more long form content, if it's a blog post or if they want to know about the history of your organization or something like that. But in general, you want to keep it short. People's, there's been tons of studies, our attention spans are not what they used to be. So you want to keep it short. You want to keep it impactful. You want to use language that makes people feel something, makes them want to take action. And of course, you want it to be clear, so people understand what you're trying to say. When you're using photos on your site, real photos of real people are typically better than stock photos, although, stock photography has gotten a lot better in the last, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years. There's some sites that have more natural looking stock photography, but they've done tons of studies where photos of real people. So if you can get photos of your actual customers, of people that actually use your product, use those on your site, that's going to be better than stock photography a lot of the time. Stock photography works. Like I said, there's some good stuff out there. When you can't get real photos, you just don't have those yet or something like that. But real photos are better, all things being equal. So video takes the most effort to produce. It's expensive to have a videographer come in and shoot something. If you're going to do it yourself, that's a lot of effort as well. Although there are ways you can do it easier today than what you used to be able to. An iPhone or other high-end cell phone takes, pretty high quality video, but video can have a huge impact. It's a great way to kind of tell your story, to get your face out there, to get some of your customers on camera. So it can be really powerful. But those are the three main types of content you're going to be talking about or looking at when you create your website. Talk about user experience. When a user arrives on their site, can they easily find what they need? Or is it hidden in some link at the bottom of the page? Is it going to take them multiple clicks to find something? Now, of course, some content is higher priority than others. So you want to make that more easily accessible. And one thing that I'll do a lot of the time is I like people to be able to find pages on a site in multiple ways, because some people will go straight to the menu first. Other people will scroll down the page, and that's going to depend on what type of device they're using as well. So, but you want to be able to answer that question, of course, with a yes, that users can easily find what they need on your site. So things need to be clearly laid out, spaced properly, easy to read. Generally, the trend has kind of gone this way, but I think there's good reasons behind it that, you want more spacing, you want larger photos, larger text. You can take that too far, but it used to be that you wanted, they call it above the fold. You wanted all the important website information to appear on the screen without any scrolling. That's really not an issue anymore. People are used to scrolling, whether they're on their phone or they're on a desktop. And you want to, I think I mentioned this a second ago, but you want to limit the number of clicks that it takes. You want to think about that for someone to find a piece of content. If it's 2-3 clicks to get somewhere, that's fine. If you're getting up into the 5-6 clicks to get a certain piece of information, that's probably too much. So this goes into, just how your menu's laid out, how your site's laid out in general. And I mentioned this before, but you want to give people multiple ways to find content, just because people think differently, people try to find things differently. And that could be a search bar, that could be your menu, that could be having content linked to from different parts of the content of your site. Okay, so search engine optimization. So mentioned this a little bit ago, but search engine, this is what allows, it's often called SEO, and this makes sure Google and other search engines can access your site, can crawl your site, and then can rank it for particular keywords. So when we're talking about, where does your website rank in a search engine? It's always for a particular keyword and usually in a specific location as well, because those things change depending on your location. So, keywords can be things like, Chinese restaurants in Cincinnati, Ohio, best value, small SUV, just about anything you can think of, that's a keyword. And there are what they call short tail and long tail keywords. Long tail keyword just means that it's less common, so it's usually a longer phrase, something with very specific geographic component to it, where the other keywords are things that are going to be a lot more common. Of course, the more common a keyword is, the harder it is to rank for that keyword. So just some things to consider as you're developing your site. And there are really two types of SEO. There's on-page SEO. So that's the content of your website, as well as some of the technical aspects, like how are things coded on the back end, and how fast does your site load. If you are using something like GoDaddy, they handle that. That's not really something you have to worry about. But the content of your site definitely is. You want You want keywords, those keywords that people are going to be searching for to find you in the right places. So in your headings, you want them throughout your website content in a few places. What you don't want to do is write really unnatural sounding content and kind of stuff those keywords in there. That's what people, used to do in the early days of the internet, but that doesn't work anymore. Obviously, the search engines have caught up. But that's on page SEO. And, of course, any of these topics you could probably do a whole 12-week course on and still have things to cover. So this is just, like I said, a high level overview. And then you have off-page SEO. And what that is primarily, are people linking to your site? So when Google first came out as a search engine, that was the big thing that made Google unique. Was that they counted inbound links, so links to your site. So the idea is that if you're producing interesting, valuable content, people are going to link to you. So that's still the biggest indicator to search engines of, is this high quality content, if people are linking to your site. Next here, mobile friendly design. Over half of all web traffic today comes from mobile devices. So that's obvious if you just look at how many people are on their phones all the time. So people are going to be out and about searching for your business, or they're sitting at home on their mobile device. But of course, people still use desktops, but so much of it is just on the phone. So you want to make sure that you're testing your site as you're building your site. You're testing it on different devices, making sure it's attractive and usable. There's something called, it's almost all websites have this now, but it's responsive design. So the website adjusts to the size of whatever screen you're looking at it on. Something like GoDaddy is going to handle a lot of those things for you, but it's still a good idea to look at that. And as you're building your site on something like GoDaddy or Wix, they're going to have a way that you can preview it on a mobile device. But I always like to, pull it up on my phone as well, just to make sure everything looks good. And again, on mobile devices, simplicity is key. If you have a whole bunch of images, or just an overwhelming amount of text, people aren't gonna read it. They're not going to be able to process it. They're going to get overwhelmed. So you really want a nice, simple, clear layout. We'll talk a little bit about speed and security here. And of course, you can't have a healthy website without both of these. If a website loads really slow, typically if it takes longer than 2 to 3 seconds for the site to load, people are going to abandon it. They're going to hit back and they're going to try to find something else. So the site has to be fast, and of course it has to be secure. If it gets hacked or the site goes down, it's not a usable website. People can't access it. So these two things are essential. And attacks against small businesses have increased in recent years. It used to be, hackers went after just the larger businesses, because of course there's more money there. But in recent years, large businesses have really beefed up their security. So they've kind of set their sights on businesses more like ours. So you just have to make sure that you kind of have your ducks in a row there. And again, I already mentioned this, but people will abandon a slow website if your pages are taking a long time to load. Again, we just don't have the we don't have the attention span. We don't have the patience to wait. So if the website's slow, they're gonna look elsewhere. They're gonna look at a competitor or something else. So and we'll talk about calls to action. Here where you have to think about, what is it? What's the ultimate action that you want users to take? Do you want them, to fill out a form so that you can follow up with them, schedule a consultation, something like that? Do you want them to pick up the phone and call your business? If you have an e-commerce store, do you want them to purchase online? Or do you want them to come in to your place of business? And sometimes it's more than one of those are acceptable, but that's your primary call to action. And that needs to be front and center. The user needs to be clear on what action do you want me to take here. And you want to show them the benefit, so you want to use benefit focused language where the user is able to answer the question, what do I get out of it? Why do I want to fill out this form? Why do I want to call this business? So your call to action needs to be benefit focused, and you need to be asking yourself that question. I mean, not just for your website, but in all your marketing, is what is your customer getting out of this? What are they trying to obtain? And then, of course, you want to make it as easy as possible for the user to take that action. So if the first example that comes to mind is an e-commerce store, if you have to go through and enter pages and pages of information to make a purchase, a lot more people are going to abandon that purchase. So you want to make it, that it's like a major rule of sales is make it easy for people to give you money. You don't want to make that difficult. So any questions? I'm seeing a couple in the chat there. WordPress, they said, do you use WordPress? And that's the primary, and we'll talk a little bit about WordPress. I'm actually teaching a course in Columbus at the ECDI office starting in April on WordPress. So it'll be an 8-week course, but that's what I use to build most of my sites. So that's what I'm most familiar with, although I've used all the different options we're going to talk about. And then Becky asked, do we style pics using a physical? So Becky, I'm assuming you're talking about e-commerce there. If possible, I think it's best to have both. I think a picture with the background cropped out, that is great just to let people focus on the item. And if it's like I said, if it's a home decor type item, I think it's really good to have pictures where it's in a home, just showing what it looks like. So of course there's a cost and an effort that goes into obtaining those. But one real quick tip. If you go, I don't know if you guys have heard of a website called Fiverr, but if you go on there, you can find people that will edit the background out of your photos for really cheap. So maybe do some research there. But examples of calls to action on websites, that's a really good question. I don't have any off the top of my head. Maybe that's something I can try to remember to send along with the slides. Let me try to think. Yeah, I don't have any examples off the top of my head, but it's something that is really going to, like I said, show the benefit and make the user want to take action. So it's going to be direct. It's going to be persuasive. I wish I had an example for you. I apologize. I can try to find that. And then Leslie says, for those of us who want to hire a website developer designer to create our first web page, are the sites that list their price packages better than those that don't? So I guess I'm a little bit biased here, but I do not list my prices. custom quote everything. Honestly, I think it depends. There's probably very good designers out there that list their pricing packages as well. But what I found is that every website is so unique. So there may be a website that, um, it has 6 pages, it has e-commerce, it has, 20 products in e-commerce, but um, there could be two websites that from those specs are identical, but the situation is actually very different. And I'm gonna charge them less than the other one. So that's been my experience. I had packages for a while, but I've moved away from that. So that's just personal preference. I think website designers are happy to give you a quote, and then you can decide if you want to go with it or walk away. I guess it's really personal preference there. And okay, so besides telling them the specifics of what I want for my website, what other questions should I be asking any company I want to hire? I would say it's a really good idea to ask them, of course, for examples of other websites they've worked on. I think references can be really good as well. If you want to ask them, hey, can I talk to some of the clients that you've worked for in the past? And if they drag their feet on something like that, that might not be a good sign, and of course they can handpick the person they're going to send to you as a reference. But I think those are two really good things. Another good thing to ask a designer is, will I have control of my website or ownership of my website? What a lot of companies will do is they will charge you a monthly fee. And then if you stop paying that monthly fee, the website goes away. What I do is I treat it just like any other product or service that you pay for. The website is yours, you own it, you have total control after we finish and launch the website. So if you want to continue to go with me, you can. If you want to work on it yourself, you can. So what kind of control will you have over the final product, I think, is another good question to ask. A lot of really good questions here. If I signed up for domain name, email with a site like GoDaddy, is my website stuck there, or can I start my website or move it to another host and keep the domain name? Yes, you can keep the domain name. So I believe, so on GoDaddy, you can point your domain name to a different host. That might be something that you want to get, if you want to research it and figure out how to do that, or you might need to get some outside help there. But yeah, GoDaddy is one of the most common domain registrars, is how they're referred to, and you can point your GoDaddy domain name to any host, any server, any different type of way you want to build your website. So. And the things that I've discussed today, are they applicable to those that want to serve and acquire international customers? Yes, they are. Now, of course, there are other things that you have to consider. I know there are, different, like the European Union has some stricter regulations about marketing. So you want to, research and be knowledgeable about all that stuff. Maybe look at hiring an attorney, because it is more complex to serve international customers. But I don't think there's anything that I've talked about here today that doesn't apply there. Okay. Naomi asks about, she has GoDaddy, is it still beneficial for her to attend the class in April? That's totally up to you. If you're looking at switching over to WordPress, which I'll get into why you may want to do that in the future, then I think it could be beneficial. I don't want to push one platform over the other, but if that's something that you think you'd want to do, then I think it could be beneficial, certainly. So, How many pages on a site? That honestly depends. It depends on what you're trying to do. If your site is purely informational, it's just here's the information about my business, here are my services, um, typically 5 to 7 pages is going to be enough, maybe even less. If it's an e-commerce site, there could be hundreds of pages depending on how many products you have. But I would say most sites are in that like 5 to 10, maybe 5 to 20 range. Um, okay. Okay, Becky, recommend a second page of style rooms separate from my product catalog. Yeah, Becky, you definitely could do something like that. Especially if you would list like, hey, here are the products that are in this shot. What I was referring to when I answered your other question is having multiple photos for each product. You have your product and then you can have, several photos of that particular product and having one on there that is just on the white background and one on there that is styled. So, um, okay. You guys are very welcome. Is it better to be product dense or have better traffic um, driven to a smaller site starting out? Um, that I mean, I think that depends a lot on what your strategy is for growing your business. I mean, I worked for a business that their strategy was to list as many products as possible. They sold Amish furniture online. And they had thousands of products on their site and thousands of products on Amazon, thousands of products on Wayfair, and they did very well with that strategy. Now, it takes a lot of effort. And then there are also companies that sell one or two products that do very well. So Becky, I wish I could give you a better answer there, but it really just depends on what your business strategy is. I would say you're better off having fewer products and doing that really well than having a whole bunch of products and not being able to keep up with things. So you're very welcome. So let's go through. Let's go on to the next section here. Okay. So here we're going to talk about what the different options are. And we've touched on this a little bit, but what the different options are for building your site. And there of course more beyond this, but these are this will give you a really good idea of kind of what that landscape looks like. So you can look at having your site custom coded. That is, and this is probably not going to apply to most of us in this discussion, but that means hiring a web developer that is going to kind of build the site from scratch. It's going to be highly yeah, we'll get into that a little bit, but it's very flexible, but also very expensive. So the next option is WordPress. Like I said, that's what I build a lot of my sites in. We'll talk a little bit about site builders like Wix and Squarespace. You guys have probably heard those names before, at least one of them. And then we'll talk a little bit about the GoDaddy website builder as well. So a custom coded site, and I'll just go over, these are all kind of laid out as pros and cons. So pro, it's extremely flexible and scalable. This is what a lot of the major brands and stuff you're going to see online. They have a site that's custom coded. Now, I mean, there are definitely smaller businesses that do go this route and can sometimes have success with this route. But that's the major advantage of it. The con is that, this is major con. It's cost prohibitive for almost all small businesses. It's, you're looking at probably $10,000 and up for a custom built site. Another major con there that's related is you're going to be reliant on those developers in the future. Now, if you're a huge business and you can hire your own team, that's maybe not as big of an issue. But for most of us, you're going to have to, hey, I want to add this update to the site. You're going to have to go back to the developer and pay, maybe $100 an hour or more for them to make that update. WordPress is, and I'm a little biased towards WordPress. I'm a big fan of it. I've been using it for about 15 years. The pro there is it is very flexible and customizable. There's a lot you can do. There's almost nothing you can't do with WordPress. It's also one of the leading. It's the leading content management system right now. Sorry, I'm glad we're coming to the end here. My voice is starting to go. But another pro is it has a very wide user base. There are, like I said, there's a ton of people using it. There are also a lot of developers that work on WordPress themes, plugins, and those are just, once you get into WordPress, you'll find out, you would find out what those things are. But that's your basic design for your site is your theme, and then your plugins are kind of add-ons, things that kind of expand the capability of what your site can do. There's also a great support community. There's a really good chance that if you start with one developer, they build your site, they can't support it in the future, they go out of business, they get another job, whatever, then you'll be able to find somebody else that knows WordPress and can work on the site. And also you can find a lot of information online because it's so widely used. A big con for WordPress is it does have a fairly high learning curve. So if you are planning to build your site yourself, unless you are very tech savvy and really interested in learning that type of thing, it can be difficult. Compared to the next few options that we'll talk about. Obviously, it's easier than custom coding your own site, but more difficult than some other options. Related to that, you will probably need to hire somebody at some point to work on your WordPress website. Not in all situations. Like I said, if you're tech savvy and you're curious and want to learn, there's resources out there to do that. So Wix and Squarespace, and these are two different platforms, but I've kind of lumped them together because I always sort of think of them the same way. There are a bunch of other platforms that fall into this kind of category as well. They offer some flexibility and extensibility, just plugins and add-ons and things like that. They are much easier to learn and to get started with than something like WordPress. They kind of walk you through it a little bit more. There's always a continuum between ease of use and flexibility. So the more flexible a system is, the harder it's going to be to learn. So WordPress is kind of a little bit more on the flexibility side. Wix and Squarespace are a little bit more on the ease of use side. A con there is a lot of the add-ons. Most of the add-ons cost extra money. And of course, there are limits to the flexibility of these platforms. It's still, there's definitely a factor that it may be too difficult for some users, depending on, how tech savvy you are, how used to these types of platforms you are. And then lastly, we'll talk about GoDaddy Website Builder. And it's something that I've really become familiar with in the last year, really through ECDI and some of their connections. But it is, I think it's the easiest option to learn. It really walks you through it. in a way that the other, a lot of the other options don't. Another major pro is it has built-in features like marketing and e-commerce that are kind of come with that whole package. So, if you are a small business owner and you want a website, but you want to get it up there, and it's mostly an informational site. But there's also e-commerce as well, but it can kind of house all those things under one roof. So it's really good for that kind of thing. A major con is it is fairly limited in flexibility, customization, and add-ons. So a lot of the time, if there are kind of unique things or special things that you want to do to your site, GoDaddy can limit you there. But it's, like I said, it's very easy to use, and it's a great starting point. So, any questions? Any questions there on any of that? And that's okay. That's okay if not. Types of add-ons. So, and this depends on the system as well, but add-ons can be e-commerce, so if you're talking about WordPress, I use something called WooCommerce a lot, which just it brings in all of those features of an e-commerce site needs. So your product listing, your prices, your cart, you can add things to cart, you can check out, you can process payments. So that WooCommerce is an add-on that does all that. It's a plugin. Like a simpler form of an add-on could be something like forms. If somebody's gonna, it could be as simple as a contact form. Somebody just entering their name, email, and a message, or it gives you the ability. A lot of them give you the ability to have drop downs, have people, add dates, upload files, things like that. So yeah, so there's trying to think of some other common examples. I use different add-ons for making sites faster, making them more secure, moving sites from one place to another. So just about anything that you can think of that you want. Yes, scheduling and booking is definitely an add-on. In GoDaddy, that I believe scheduling and booking, at least to a certain extent, is built in. But a lot of the time, scheduling and booking with a calendar, and maybe with more robust features, requires some type of add-on or plugin. So, hope that answers your question there. You're welcome. Any other questions? If not, we'll kind of wrap up there. It was definitely the most eventful presentation, one of the most eventful I've done in a while. But I thanks again for sticking through it with me. Okay, so our website's created. One more question here. By the sites you listed, owned by the client. So something like GoDaddy, that is going to be owned by GoDaddy, and that's another, I guess, a small drawback. If you stop paying the GoDaddy's monthly fee, your site's going to go away, and that's just the way those systems are set up. That being said, they're not outrageously expensive. Some website development companies will charge hundreds of dollars per month to have your website up, or GoDaddy doesn't do that. And for something like WordPress, there are actually two different kind of versions of WordPress that used to be the same and have since split. There's WordPress.com, which is kind of more like a GoDaddy or a Wix. in that they host it for you. And there's also, and I hope this isn't too confusing, but there's a self-hosted version called WordPress.org. And that's what I generally use. And that you own, once the website. Now you do have to pay for hosting. And the hosting cost is pretty comparable with what you pay to GoDaddy every month. So you do have to host it. You have to host that yourself. So it's self-hosted. Hope that makes sense. My thoughts on Weebly. I have not used Weebly in years. My first impression is that they are not as much of a major player anymore in the space, which is why I didn't mention them, but I could be wrong about that. They could have changed some things, and so I don't, like I said, there are a lot of good options out there, but I'm not too familiar with what Weebly looks like these days. Okay. Okay, a couple more questions here. I'm building a website with Squarespace. I would like to get some business savvy feedback on the structure, look, feel, etc. before I get too far. Where can I get that? So ECDI has a network of professionals, of consultants. I'm one of them that can do that kind of work for you. And I don't want to speak out of turn, but a lot of that can be grant funded. So you don't have to pay for it yourself. So I would talk to, somebody at ECDI, at the Women's Business Center, about that. So yes, I guess that's actually through the Women's Business Center, and not ECDI, but they're kind of one and the same. But so yes, that is offered. Is it a good idea to purchase several domains close to your main domain name email? Yes, that is a good idea. And domain names are generally fairly inexpensive. Yeah, you would be able to cut down on copycats. Yeah. Now, is that as big of a risk as some people make it out to be? Probably not, unless your business really starts to take off. You have to build, you kind of have to build up your brand before somebody's going to be able to get something out of copycatting it. But just kind of out of an abundance of caution, yeah, it's not a bad idea at all to buy. Maybe if you're getting a .com, to also get the .org and the .net, or to get a couple of domains that are similar to yours. And you may have other future uses for those domains as well. And I think a domain's typically, anywhere from $3-4 to $15 a month, unless you're talking about, premium domain names, which are, just names that are in a lot higher demand. Those can get really expensive, but you guys are very welcome.
So that is all for me. Thank you all so much for taking your time out for today. Thank you, Chris, for offering your services to us, and I look forward to speaking with some of you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.